Hello everyone, this is Shubham. In the ophthalmology section, in previous video in ophthalmology, I have discussed about the choroid layer, which is a part of the uveal tract in our eyeball. So I will quickly recap the structure of eyeball so that you can really understand for what structure I am talking about. And mainly I will talk about the ciliary body, which is also the part of the uveal tract in our eyeball. So let's quickly recap the structure of the eyeball, and then we will discuss about the ciliary body. So for an example, this will be a very rough diagram. For example, this is our eyeball, the lateral view of our eyeball. You know the posterior part of our eyeball, the outermost posterior part of our eyeball is the sclera. Earlier I have talked about this, and the anterior most portion is the cornea, okay, and after to which we have the conjunctival sac. Now the outermost layer is the sclera. Inside to it we have the highly vascular layer, which we called as choroid. So inside to it a very highly vascular layer is present, and we call it as choroid. In the previous video I have gone into the detail of the choroid, that what is the significance of this layer, of this highly vascular layer, and this is the first part. If we talk about the from posterior to anterior, it is the first part of the uveal tract, because in uveal tract I have told you in the uveal tract what structures are present. So in uveal tract we have basically three structures which are present over there. And what are those structures? These are the choroid. So choroid, which is the internal layer inside to the sclera. So this is the choroid layer, right? Choroid, which is the highly vascular. Remember, the sclera or the cornea is not vascular, but our choroid is the vascular. Our choroid is vascular, our ciliary body, and as well as our iris is also a vascular structure in our eyeball. So uveal tract consists of the choroid. Then as you will move further more anteriorly towards the cornea, so you will find there the ciliary body, which is also a part of the uveal tract, and the last one is the iris. Okay, so these three structures combinedly known as the uveal tract. So these three structures combinedly called as the uveal tract. About the choroid, in my previous video I have talked about this, and now in this video I will be talking about the ciliary body. Okay, so inside to the sclera we have the choroid layer, and choroid layer is continuing into the ciliary body. So the choroid layer is further continuing into the ciliary bodies, right? So these are the ciliary body I have drawn over here. Now these ciliary body will further continue into the flap-like structure. These are the flap-like structure, and we call them as iris. Remember, all these structures which are drawn over here with the red color, that is the choroid, ciliary body and the iris, these all three structures are highly vascular, which means they have the blood supply. So let me name the structures over here. Outermost was the more posteriorly it was the sclera, more anteriorly it was the cornea, right? Then this inner layer I call it as the choroid. This one will be the ciliary body. And this structure I have drawn over here is the iris. Again, choroid, ciliary body and iris, these three structures combinedly called as the uveal tract in ophthalmology. So inside to it we have one more layer, and that is the retina. You all must know about this. So this is the retina. In the retina we have, very gradually speaking, in the retina we have two kinds of layers. That is the pigmentary layer, which is the more inside to it. So for example, this is the pigmentary layer of the retina, for example, and inside to it we have one more layer of the retina, which is called as the neural layer. So with the black I have drawn over here is the pigmentary layer or pigmentary epithelium, pigmentary layer of the retina, and more inside to it we have one more layer, that is the neural layer, for example this one. So that will be the neural layer of the retina. So these are the part of the retina. So this with the blue color is the retina. About retina, I will talk about retina in my later videos in detail, but now this video is about the ciliary body. After the ciliary body, I will cover up the iris in the next section. So now this is the structure of the eyeball, outer overview of the eyeball. And don't forget that we have what kind of structure? Here we have the vitreous body, right, where the vitreous humor is present. So for example, this will be the vitreous body, and this will be the anterior segment, remember. And here we have the zonules, right? We have the suspensory ligaments connecting with the ciliary body, and in between them we have the lens over there. For example, this is our lens, right? This is our lens. So what I was telling, that behind the lens whatever structures are present, that are called as the posterior segment of the eyeball. So for example, these structures, the retina, the choroid layer, right, the sclera, the outermost layer of our eyeball, and the vitreous body, in which the vitreous humor is present in our eyeball. So those structures which are present behind the lens, these structures we call it as, they are present in the posterior chamber, posterior segment actually. So this is the structures which are present behind the lens. This portion we called it as the posterior segment, and the structures which are present in front of the lens, for example from here up to the cornea. So these structures, this is the part of the anterior segment. This is the behind the lens, there will be the part of the posterior segment, and this will be called as the anterior segment. Anterior segment, right? Anterior segment. Now one more thing you must know, that you can see the structure over here, flap like structure, which we called it as the iris, right? So in front of the lens and behind the iris, which means between the lens and the iris, which is the part of the anterior segment, we call it as the posterior chamber, and between the iris and the cornea we call this portion as the anterior chamber. So further anterior segment is divided into, you can say that further anterior segment also has two parts. And what are these parts? These are the posterior chamber. So these are the posterior chamber, and the anterior chamber, right? So what part I am calling the posterior chamber and what part I am calling the anterior chamber? The posterior chamber is the part between the lens and the iris. So for example, this portion with the blue color, which I am marking over here, so this portion will be called as the posterior chamber. So let me write over here. So this is the posterior chamber, and the portion which is present between the iris and the cornea. So this portion over here, right? This portion will be the part of the anterior chamber. Anterior chamber. So what we just saw, that we have the posterior segment that is behind the lens. In front of the lens up to the cornea we have the anterior segment, and in anterior segment also we have two kinds of chambers present over there. These are the posterior chamber present between the lens and the iris, right? And the anterior chamber present between the iris and the cornea, right? Don't forget that here we have the which structure? We have the Canal of Schlemm over here, right? Canal of Schlemm, which is very important clinically in case of glaucoma, because what happens in glaucoma, these Canal of Schlemm got obstructed over there and the aqueous humor is not able to drain from them, right? So we have two kinds of glaucoma, open angle glaucoma or the narrow angle glaucoma, right? So what happens over there, these Canal of Schlemm got obstructed due to some kind of obstruction, and there is no drainage of the aqueous humor present in our anterior chamber of our eyeball, right? About glaucoma, I have talked about this in my previous videos also. Now, the aqueous humor is produced by which structure, if you will talk about? Then the ciliary body is responsible for the production and the secretion of the aqueous humor. Now, what is the significance of aqueous humor in our eyeball? In our eyeball, aqueous humor provides the nutrition to the anterior chamber of our eyeball, right? So, as I have told you that cornea is avascular, there is no blood supply over there. There are no blood vessels which are innervating the cornea. Anyhow, the cornea wants the nutrition, right? So if the cornea is avascular, there are no blood supply, because usually in other organs, as we know, that blood vessels are responsible for providing the nutrition to our organs, right? So in our eyeball, the cornea portion is avascular, so there is no blood vessel over there. There is not any kind of blood supply over there, but anyhow they want the nutrition to work over there. So that's why the aqueous humor produced by our ciliary bodies, right? They have the finger-like projection, as you can see over here, right? So I'm magnifying this area. I'm magnifying our ciliary body over here, and let's focus over here. So for an example, this is our ciliary body, right? This is our ciliary body. This I am drawing the one ciliary body over here, right? This part of the ciliary body, actually ciliary body have the two portions, right? This portion we called it as the pars plana, because as you can see I have drawn it like plane, right? This is the plane part, so we call it as the pars plana. And the finger-like projections, ciliary processes of the ciliary body, these are called as these finger-like projections. The finger-like projections are called as the pars placata, right? These finger-like projections, and these finger-like projections are actually responsible for providing the aqueous humor, or for secreting the aqueous humor firstly into the posterior chamber, because remember I have told you that between the lens and the iris we have the posterior chamber over here. So firstly the ciliary body, with the help of the pars placata, they will secrete the aqueous humor into the posterior chamber. Then it will nourish this area, it will provide the nutrition to this area in the posterior chamber, and then between the iris it will enter into the anterior chamber and will provide the nutrition over here, right? and will provide the nutrition over here and through the Canal of Schlemm. So these are the Canal of Schlemm drawn over here. So what is this structure? This is the Canal of Schlemm, which helps in drainage of the aqueous humor. Whatever aqueous humor is providing the nutrition to this, right? So whatever aqueous humor is here, they will provide the way to drain out from the anterior chamber of the eyeball, right? They are present on the both sides. So these are the Canal of Schlemm, right? So what I was telling, that these pars placcata, these finger-like projections in our ciliary body, which I have drawn over here, and I have magnified this part over here. So these, first of all, this planar part is called the pars plana, and these finger-like projections, the ciliary processes, which we call them as, of the ciliary body, these are the ciliary processes, right? The finger-like projections over there. So they are responsible for secreting the aqueous humor. What is the intention of the aqueous humor? Aqueous humor provides the nutrition, right? Provide the nutrition to our posterior chamber as well as anterior chamber, as there is no blood supply over there, because these structures are avascular, right? They must be avascular, they must be transparent, because it is very useful for our cornea to be transparent, because whatever light is coming into our eye, they're coming first of all through the cornea and entering into the anterior chamber, and then with the help of the lens, they make the image on the retina. If these structures will be opaque, the light will not be able to enter into the lens, or the lens will not be able to converge the light, because it is not getting the proper amount of light. So there will be the blurring of vision in that case. So the anterior chamber must be the transparent. That's why there is no blood supply. These structures are avascular. Now, so the pars placcata portion of the ciliary bodies, they are responsible for secreting the aqueous humor inside our posterior chamber, then it goes into the anterior chamber, right? Now, in the retina, I've told you about the two layers over there. First one, I have told you about the pigment epithelium, a pigment layer, and the inside to it, we have the neural layer. However, we have 10 kinds of layers in the retina, right? So about those, I will talk about the retina portion. I will make the separate video on the retina, but just now I'm talking about the ciliary body. So this pigmentary layer of the retina, so which I have drawn with the black color, these are also present behind the ciliary body as well as iris. Over here also, right? These are present behind the ciliary body and the iris as well. Now, this neural layer also contains the rods and cones structures, right? You must have heard about the rods and cones, right? So the rod cells mainly helps us to see the objects in the darker, and the cones are responsible, or cone cells helps us to see the objects in the daylight, right? So these rods and cones are present in the neural layer of the retina, right? Rods and cones. So remember, the rods and the cones, these both cells are present just till this portion. Actually, the portion between the sclera and the cornea, I've talked about this earlier also. This portion is called as the limbus, which is the corneoscleral junction. So the corneoscleral junction, also called as the limbus, and the junction between the choroid and the ciliary body, which means I'm talking about this junction on both the sides, right? This junction, we called it as the ora serrata. Right? On both the sides, of course. Now, Actually, I was talking about the rods and cones, right? They are present in the neural layer. So let me name these layers also so that you don't confuse. So this with the black color, I've drawn, these are the part of retina, don't forget that. So this layer I've drawn over here, that is the pigment layer. That is the pigment layer. And with the red color, that was the neural layer. That was the neural layer, right? So the neural layer contains the rods and cones structures. Now, as far as pigment layer is concerned of the retina, pigment layer is present beneath the or besides the ciliary body as well as iris on both the sides. But as far as neural layer is concerned, neural layer is also present. For example, this was the neural layer with the red color. These are also present beside the retina, beside the ciliary body and the iris on both the sides, of course. But the thing is, rod and cone cells are not present beside the ciliary body and the iris, which means they are just innervating the structures till the ora serrata on both the sides. So from here up to here, rods and cones are present, but as far as ciliary body and iris are concerned on both the sides, rods and cone structures are not present over there, right? But the pigment layer is present over there, as well as neural layers, some layers of the retina. As I have told you, there are about 10 layers of the retina. They can innervate these structures of the ciliary body and the iris, right? Now talking about the inner structures of the ciliary body, what structures are present in the ciliary body? So the outer structures, you know about them, that these are the pars plana and the pars placcata. They are the finger like projections, the ciliary processes of the ciliary body. Inside to it, this structure, right? This structure is the stroma. And inside it, we have the muscle, which is the ciliary muscle or muscularis ciliaris. So ciliary muscles have three kinds of fibers, three kinds of muscle fibers over there, three kinds of muscles. Like this is the longitudinal muscle, longitudinal, and these ones, for example, these ones will be the radial fibers of the muscles, radial fibers of the ciliary muscles. So these are, for example, the radial fibers, right? And over here, the circular layer is present, circular fibers of the muscles are present. So these will be the circular one, right? These will be the circular one. Circular fibers of the muscle, circular muscle fibers, you can say, of the ciliary body. Now the main functions, the important function of the ciliary body is the accommodation, the property of accommodation. What is accommodation? That it is the property to focus on the nearer and the far objects from our eye. For example, right now I am seeing the far objects from me. So in that process also, and if I am seeing this marker which is the nearer to me, so for example I am seeing the wall and suddenly I decided to see the marker which is very near to my eyes. So I am using right now to just focus on this marker. So I am using my ciliaris muscles, as well as I am using my suspensory ligaments or zonules. Actually, these are the zonules. These are the zonules or suspensory ligament which held the lens in our eyeball on both the sides. So they are coming from the ciliary body and they are holding the lens over there. So we call them as suspensory ligaments or the zonules. So with the help of the suspensory ligaments or zonules and the ciliaris muscle, Actually, these three structures, what we call them as ciliary muscle, right? So with the help of ciliary muscles and zonules, we able to accommodate, we able to focus on the near and far objects, right? Actually, what happens when I'm seeing the far objects, these ciliary muscles relax, right? So these ciliary muscles relax over there, and if they will relax, so for example, they are relaxing over here, right? So if they will relax, the zonules or the suspensory ligaments, right? For example, let me draw over here. These are the suspensory ligaments over here, right? In between them, what structure we have? We have the lens over there. Usually the structure of lens, the shape of the lens is elliptical, but when these fibers relax, for example, if I am seeing the nearer object, these fibers, these suspensory fibers, see these suspensory ligaments or zonules, they actually relax and they make the lens globular in shape. So for example, in normal situations, if this is our lens, right, which is the elliptical in shape, when these fibers, when these suspensory ligaments or zonules will relax and the ciliary muscles contract, our lens will become the globular, like this, right? So actually, the mechanism between the ciliary muscle and the suspensory ligaments or zonules are actually reverse, opposite. Whenever ciliary muscles will contract, the zonules will relax, and whenever the ciliary muscles will relax, the zonules will contract, right? So whenever I am seeing the far objects, our ciliary body, our ciliary muscles, actually our ciliary muscles will relax when I am seeing the far objects, and when I am seeing the nearer objects to me, so then in that case our ciliary muscles will contract and the zonules will relax, right? So they are working in the opposite way. Whenever the ciliary muscles will contract, our zonules will relax, and whenever our ciliary body will relax, zonules will contract, right? So they work in just opposite directions. One will contract, the other one will relax, and according to that, the change of the size of our lens occurs. The size of the lens, according to that situation, our accommodation property, that will depend on the contraction and relaxation of the ciliary muscles and the zonules, right? So this was about the ciliary body. About the nerve supply of the ciliary body, parasympathetic nerve fibers usually innervate the ciliary muscles which are present in the ciliary body, as you can see, and the sphincter pupillae. We have pupillae. In the pupil we have the two kinds of sphincters over there, the sphincter pupillae and the dilators, which dilate the pupil, right? So for the constriction of the pupil, we have the sphincter pupillae. For the dilator, we have the dilators of the pupil. So in the sphincter pupillae and the muscle of the ciliary body, that is the ciliary muscles, we have the parasympathetic innervation over there. As I have told you that this uveal tract, which have the choroid, ciliary body and the iris, in these three structures. So in the ciliary body, which is actually the vascular part, so the parasympathetic innervations over there, they are innervating the ciliary muscles over here, right? And the sphincter pupillae. These structures are innervated by the parasympathetic nerve fibers. These fibers come from the midbrain in our brain, from the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, right? So this was about the ciliary body, the overview of the ciliary body, and in this video I have talked about the various structures present in the ciliary body, what is the function of ciliary body, and how the ciliary muscles and the zonules helps us to focus on the near or far objects. I hope you liked the video. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more. Thank you so much.